Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome back to the Southasia lectures. This is day two and the Bangladesh day. Since we're going through the eight countries in alphabetical order, today we have with us Dr. I should just stop for a minute and say that this series is supported by our CSS, Himal, South Asian, and Sansrishti in our outreach efforts, and I'm really grateful to them. Our speaker today is Dr. Anwara Begum, and I'm going to read her bio out to you. Dr. Anwara Begum is a distinguished research director at the Bangladesh Institute of Development Studies with over 36 years of experience in research, policy, and development. Her areas of specialization include urbanization and migration, education and human resource development, gender and poverty, monitoring and evaluation, and climate change adaptation. Dr. Anwara has served as research director at both BIDS and the Center for Integrated Rural Development for Asia and the Pacific, and has worked as a consultant to major international organizations. And I should tell you, as you probably can guess, I have truncated her very long CV. She's a person of many, many, many accomplishments, which would take up all of the hour that she has to speak. So an accomplished scholar, Dr. Anwara has authored more than 86 publications in reputed international outlets such as OUP, Routledge, Taylor and Francis, Sage, and Springer. Her seminal work, Destination Dhaka, and pioneering studies such as Issues in Housing with OUP, Engendering the Garment Industry, UPL, and her review on education policy published by Taylor and Francis, have established her as a leading authority on urbanization, migration, education, and gender equality. In recognition of her outstanding contribution to academia and development, she received the MTC Global Award for Excellence in Education in 2024. And I'm actually going to put her bio in the chat so you can read it for yourself. Um, but in the meanwhile, I will hand the floor over to Dr. Anwara Begum. Dr. Anwara, I'm very grateful to you for accepting to give this talk. Extremely grateful. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Swarna. And I would like to tell you that you have humbled me a lot, and you have even honored me by giving me this opportunity. And I would go straight to my presentation. Um, Welcome to the presentation on gendered vulnerabilities, climate migration, and livelihoods in the Bengal Delta. I have a few points that you might need to look back on, but I will go straight to the presentation. We see that Dr. Swarna wanted us to highlight just four slides on which we will talk about Bangladesh's challenges, especially in terms of climate change. So here it is, the salinity and water scarcity, especially in the Delta region, that is Satkhira, Khulna, where contaminated drinking water reduces the health outcomes as well as agricultural productivity, cyclones and storm surges, especially in Khulna and Bola, river erosion in Bhola, where villages have lost to the Meghna River, and livelihood loss. What are the government's response and policy stance? Delta Plan 2100 and National Adaptation Plan focuses on the resilient infrastructure and embankments and long-term delta management, disaster preparedness and adaptive livelihoods, including planned relocation. In this presentation, you will get a glimpse of all these efforts. What are the implications in terms of justice? We see that there is very unequal access to relief, especially for the women and poorer households who are often bypassed after major cyclones. NGOs support filling gaps, livelihood training, microfinance, water solutions, especially in Shatkhira and Khulna, but these are contained and small in scale, and these require to be scaled up. Land insecurity, especially in Bhola, where there are no formal land titles in relocation areas. Bhola is highly eroded, and the rivers have got river beds which are on a higher level than previously. Khulna resorts to shrimp aquaculture. The gendered burdens, that is where we are going to pay more emphasis upon, because here we see that there is increased labor and care responsibilities and climate shocks. What are these? Pregnant women are often tied to trees so that they are not washed away, suffered postpartum bleeding, premature births, hypertension, and burial of dead bodies is a real chore. So you can see what they have to resort to. What are the key takeaways for understanding the context? Climate impacts in the Delta are not gender neutral. Migration is increasingly an adaptive necessity. Secure land rights are central to justice and long-term resilience. Local experiences show that these are producing different but interconnected vulnerabilities which impact upon the region as well. And I will show you 3 case studies. What is the takeaway message? Future adaptation measures should be based on trends and projection, considering the local drivers of change and physical processes, especially along the coast. Climate change in the Bengal Delta intensifies gender inequality, disrupts livelihoods, and makes secure land access and livelihoods essential for sustainable and adaptation. To appraise the impacts of hydrometeorological deluge on livelihoods, especially women, this will be foremost in our discussion to understand the coping mechanisms and capacities of affected communities to adopt or avoid migration and how it differs for men and women. Basic needs. However, the prevailing scenario of the cyclone centers is not as it should be. We see that there is male domination, extremely abusive social norms, often discourage taking refuge with strangers in these shelters. What was the outcome of all these years of experience with disasters? Planned core family shelters linking disaster shelter homes, livelihoods, markets, skills, etc. Stairs conducive to use by women and increase fresh drinking water, health education programs involving more women, early recovery facility staff, train females in early recovery. These were all planned and these are being put into implementation, into action. However, we need to pinpoint something very important. That is to look at the medium to longer term differentiated impacts of natural disasters, as these natural events could have regional consequences that can persist for decades. You will see in the video that Bangladesh has only about 7% of the uh, sources of water that flow over Bangladesh, and the rest are in other watershed areas. When we look at the case study of Afsana Begum from Shatkhira, we see that her experience has been burdened adaptation, water scarcity, gendered labor, insecure land, because this area, Shatkhira, has got extensive salinity, which has destroyed rice farming, and also they need to go walk for many miles to get water, drinking water, then loss of land from waterlogging, etc. Rashida Khatun from Bhola says that she lost her home twice to the Meghna River erosion. And what do we learn from here? We see that there are cycles of displacement, landlessness, fragile livelihoods, reliance on NGOs who are supportive, but on a very small scale. And managing family alone during male migration actually is very cumbersome for the women. So we see that livelihoods have collapsed after displacement and husbands have got seasonal income. What about Mariam Akhtar from Khulna? Repeated cyclone damage, long periods of waterlogging, and they have to resort to cyclone adaptation because there is prolonged cyclone exposure, gender labor inequalities, unstable livelihood structures. This actually impacts upon the health because due to salinity, they suffer from many ailments. I will get into that in a later slide. What do Satkhira, Bhola, and Khulna tell us about the delta? Diverse hazards, but similar precarity. Salinity, erosion, cyclones, all destabilize life and incomes. Gendered vulnerabilities cut across districts. Land insecurity is a structural barrier, and migration is now a major adaptation strategy, but this is not available to all, especially when we talk about women. NGO support helps, but cannot substitute state responsibility because the coverage varies and structural issues like land and wages remain unresolved. What are the recommendations on right-based framework? We need to elaborate upon community-level SRHR and climate resilient programs, invest in women and girls leadership, design inclusive services for marginalized and vulnerable women, promote gender norms change to transform inequalities, expand rights and prevent GBV, gender-based violence, ensure institutional accountability through coordination and feedback, integrate SRHR into climate policies, and also strengthen evidence-based policy and programming. And I would say that we have tried to find out the evidences from our survey of 2016 and 18. This is showing you one of the resettlement areas in Ramgoti, where we went in 2016. And here we found that there are ERF and CDSP attempts to rehabilitate them, but the findings from the survey show that government provides land for resettlers, but no infrastructure, social services, or support for livelihood transition. Decision-making process of who receives resettlement support is unfair, with particularly vulnerable people missing out. Those who received resettlement support were unsatisfied, with the majority wanting to return to their ancestral home, and there was no consensus on the efficacy of resettlement as a policy. They suggested that greater effort should be placed on community-based adaptation. Yesterday, we listened to Dr. Sadiq that in Afghanistan, they have more of community-based adaptation. That is what our respondents are asking for. How do I explain gender dimension? There are just 4 points. Sudden and slow onset environmental hazards impact vulnerability of people in different ways, women in particular. Voluntary and involuntary relocation has to be planned for, and there is limited anticipatory planning, especially for women, children, elderly, and disabled, and no acceptable livelihood. And we need to assist people directly impacted by climate change and environmental hazards. Here I focus in on the women. Empirical evidence suggests that women more than men are severely affected, and they are exposed for lengthy periods to saline water, and they also need access to paid, less risky work so that it will bolster their resilience, improve women friendliness of centers, shelters, and provide them SRH healthcare, particularly contraception and MRM. Because in these areas, women are highly victimized and harassed. So they need also a segregated space like separate rooms and toilets. What are the recommendations from our survey of 2016 and 18? Government schemes such as the village cluster model should be explored. Livelihood choices and rehabilitation could be expedited. Very important is gender analysis to understand impacts of climate hazards, especially women, differently able, elderly, etc. We see only 42% of the female of total working population are engaged in active labor, and the rest have to do with underemployment, etc. State-led support and monitoring is crucial to achieve satisfactory recovery and SDGs. The use of community land trust should be encouraged. Policy on internally displaced persons and a review of events and activities are needed. Emergency and regular relocation programs should be mainstreamed and accessible. Land acquisition and land set aside projects should begin immediately. I will be showing you a video, and here it discusses the ecology, livelihoods, and food security that are at risk, especially for coastal communities and ecosystems like the Sundarbans. And we see that saltwater intrusion can harm crops and freshwater supply, as well as fisheries and aquatic plants. Now, I have given some research findings, and so that when it goes into the research page, they will be able to access these. But we see that adaptation and mitigation are still possible, especially when arranging for specific strategies. And also, there is a shortage of water supply, housing, and overall habitability in these areas. Some coastal regions like near Chattogram, Cox's Bazar, may be even more threatened than previously believed, because a recent study found that eastern coastal plain shows some of the highest rates of relative sea level rise in Bangladesh. Displacement challenges for Bangladesh. We have seen nearly 125,000 hectares disappear in the last 50 years. 2025 report claims this, and this represents a massive loss of agricultural land, and many have become displaced, and they have become climate migrants, relocated to shores, embankments, or urban areas. Why this matters for Bangladesh now and for the future? Food security threat, loss of fertile agricultural land, and reduced crop yields, especially in staple grains like rice, endangers local food supply and livelihoods. Water insecurity, fresh water sources become brackish, and drinking water is very difficult to find. Irrigation becomes harder to secure. Basic human needs and farming uh, gets uh, downtrodden. Forced migration and social stress. Hundreds of thousands need to be relocated from shrinking coastal areas, putting pressure on urban centers and social systems. Ecosystems collapse, and because of this damage to wetlands, mangrove freshwater ecosystems, which often act as natural buffers against storms and floods, make coastal regions even more vulnerable to extreme weather. Long-term compounding effects, soil degradation, salinity intrusion, land loss, accumulation, impacts magnify over decades, making future adaptation more difficult and expensive. With that, I come to the end of my presentation. Thank you for a patient hearing. I would like to request Dr. Swarna to begin the video. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. Anwara. I will now play the film that you had requested. We stop there and then we can come back to the video, or as I said, I will add the links to the resource page, and that can be my cue to add the links, relevant links here in the meanwhile. The question is from Atika Hassan. What are some ways where the climate adaptation policies can be further strengthened and become more inclusive for climate displacement issues in the country and in extension also the region?
Acha Boshin. Hello. Yeah,
Hello.
yes. Could you repeat? I was just asking my IT manager whether it's
Yes, yes.
possible. Okay.
I
Could you
think,
repeat
yes, I will
your
read the question.
question?
What are some ways where the climate adaptation policies can be further strengthened and become more inclusive for climate displacement issues in the country and in extension also the region? This is from Atika Hassan.
Okay. Actually, there are adaptation strategies which physical fishing communities who go out to sea during climate change, and there are hidden sandbars, etc., and repeated exposures to cyclones actually uh, sort of hampered their livelihoods. So there should be coordinated effort with the meteorological uh, offices with the local offices, the TNO and NGOs, where they will be able to forecast whether there are options to understand what the next strategy should be in terms of identifying hidden sandbars or um, inaccuracy in weather forecasts and lack of access to equipment in order to be able to carry on their livelihoods. This is at the local level, but we know that women have suffered a lot during climate cyclones, salinity, etc. So, in order to enable women, it is absolutely essential for NGOs to coordinate with the government to scale up their work that they are already doing and reach more of these women in order to safeguard their livelihoods for a sustainable future. And then again, there are ways of adapting to water bodies, meaning there will be wetland agriculture. And this actually, not only wetland agriculture, the fact that at 93% of the water that flows through Bangladesh, through the deltaic region, comes from upstream from places like Assam, India, etc. So there has to be a collaborative effort between these governments to be able to harness whenever there is a deluge. Meaning to say that if I have the Farakka barrage, then in that case, there should be an MOU. There is an MOU, but the understanding should be adhered to, not opening up more sluice gates so that this deltaic region gets inundated. And beyond that, the meteorological know-how should be shared among all countries. I think there are many ways in which these cyclone as well as saline-ridden areas can be helped, and it will require a sincere effort on the part of all governments or from all over the world to be able to address this, because this climate risk is not making of Bangladesh's activities. It's a global issue which needs to be taken into cognizance by the global leaders, etc. Moreover, we are suffering from lack of land. Still, we are harboring Rohingyas, more than 12 lakhs. So this is something which we are doing, but at the same time we have been able to give them help from the army, etc., and we have also given them settlements. But what is happening really along the coast, that is below the 19-degree latitude, the whole deltaic region is beset with problems with regard to the ecology. And this has to be taken into consideration by all the countries together. It cannot be a one country effort at all. Thank you.
There are a couple of others. I'm going to first read Lalita Ramdas's question because it relates to your closing point. How do we plan to work more closely together across the region, either by reviving SARC as an important umbrella or by linking with the many climate and energy and ecological initiatives in most of South Asia? It would be helpful to hear of any such steps planned or in place. Um, there is another question from Raki Surya Prakash. Are funds reaching the affected communities, Dr. Anwara? You mentioned that NGOs are present in a limited way and government systemic action is not widespread. Is this a funding issue or just low priority to coastal and delta adaptation and rebuilding, especially medical support to women?
Uh,
Bangladesh
So the first is
is a
about,
riverine country and is a part
oh, what
of the
happened?
largest active delta.
Are you
About
playing the film?
93% of the basin area is
Kopati,
outside of Bangladesh.
wonderful data. Yes, uh, I was just trying that video out. Okay. Yeah, I got your question, but partially. Could you repeat it, please?
Okay. From Lalita Ramdas, the question is, how do we plan to work more closely together across the region, either through SARC or by linking with the many climate and energy and ecological initiatives in across South Asia? And the second question, which is actually the first question, from Raki Surya Prakash, is: are funds reaching the affected communities? You mentioned that NGOs are present in a limited way and government systemic action is not widespread. Is this a funding issue or just low priority to coastal and delta adaptation and rebuilding, especially medical support to women?
Mhm. Okay, there are two parts to this question. Number one is whether we will be able to uh, 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 upgrade or sort of scale up these efforts to mitigate. Uh, Actually, SARC, to my understanding, SARC hasn't been able to play its role fully. And at the private during the private initiatives, we see that the sincerity is there, but this large scale work hasn't shown up. For instance, you yourself have begun a platform where people can learn more about climate change and the justice or injustice for women. So this is one of the important innovative ways that one can reach people, more people, meaning it shouldn't be confined to academics only. We need action research. The research that we have done, we need to translate that into action. Unfortunately, research organizations don't do this action research. So what is needed now is to sort of revive organizations like SARC, number one, and then bring on board people who are like-minded, especially the youth, to create a platform where they will be able to uh, sort of pool in resources, whether it is intelligence, whether it is equipment, whether it is meteorological know-how or high-rise building. This is actually something which needs to be thought out at length. For this moment, this is all that I would say, that a concerted effort from all stakeholders is needed, and that it has to be focused on these people. And what about the government and the NGO? There is very little coordination between the government and the NGO. And then we are scaling this up because it's impossible to work without the government's assistance, because most of the large scale projections, etc., even the building up of or repairing of the embankments. In this video, there are miles and miles of embankments which have been raised to nearly 68 centimeter, to withhold the saline water from intruding into the agricultural land. So what happens is that whenever there is a cyclone, the local people suffer for too long. So this is where people who are conscious, who are like-minded, who are socially oriented, social welfare oriented, they are the ones who will bring forth these attempts to alleviate these problems for the people in those areas. I can't hear you.
Yeah, no, one part of Raki's question was, uh, as I understood it, was in the help that is given to different regions. Is there are coastal deltaic regions maybe getting less attention, or maybe this wasn't what she was asking. This is what I read in her question. But let me ask you that before reading out the next one. Is there
There
a
more help.
region?
No, a lot of, I don't know the exact amount of resources in terms of monetary fund that is going into these areas. I haven't looked at that part. But then the whole of Bangladesh is very small, and the coastline is 720 kilometers long. And that coastline is manned and monitored and maintained by the army. So I told you for nearly 15 now, it's nearly 15 lakh Rohingyas who have been who are being fed and kept for the last 3-4 years in Cox's Bazar. A whole generation has grown up over there. So I don't know how much of resources are being injected into these areas. And a lot of resources are also going in trying to stop the elements, the wrong elements from entering and disrupting the livelihoods of the local people. So it's not only a physical disaster, it's also a social and economic disaster that we are facing, this small country. So I'm not in a position to answer that.
Thank you. Aditya Kumar asks, he says, I'm currently studying in the Netherlands, and I've seen that a lot of the water infrastructure, mitigation, and adaptation related research for Bangladesh has historically been done in collaboration with the Netherlands. Do you think that this relationship has been fruitful? And do you believe that more research needs to be done locally in South Asia as well?
Mm, No, thank you so much. Actually, the Netherlands have been very effective in harnessing a lot um, of the work that has been done. But sometimes we have problems with programs like the CDSP. CDSP, some organizations have been working for so many years that by now they have become expert at creating reports. But when we went to Ramgati, we didn't find it being implemented. It hasn't been articulated. The government has given land, but the government has not been able to give the social services or the infrastructure or the livelihoods to these people. So what is happening is that there are people who are working in between, and these are the people who are giving up reports which really don't give us the reality of the situation. It's only when we go to these areas that the people speak to us, that is when we realize how much is being trickled down to them. But really, I tell you, the ERF, the Early Recovery Facility, and the CDSP, which has been there as milestones and applauded for nearly half a generation, haven't yet been able to make a significant contribution. So I thank this person who has brought up the Netherlands, because we have had help from Netherlands, we have had help from Japan, technological help. So, and I think it has been extremely worthwhile for these communities. And the communities often say that if the government had allowed them to, given them the license to repair their own embankments, they would have done so in a timely manner. The importance is the time. You see, the importance really lies in being able to address and stop the saline water from intruding into vast areas of shrimp cultivation or vast areas of agricultural land, which actually even corrodes the plinths, the concrete structures of buildings. It erodes the food. It erodes the utensils, everything, clothes, everything. So in reality, it has to be a continuous process, and it has to be a collaboration between the community, NGO, and the government, and people who are all over the world and who feel that they need to help out in this regard.
Thank you. Would you like to try the video from your screen?
Yes, please, I'll try this video.
Yeah. So it's a 12-minute video, and if your questions, you can leave them because we'll still have a few minutes after that. So you can still type in. We have about a couple of minutes left if anyone's been wondering whether to ask a question, but if not, I will say thank you very much, Dr. Anwara. This was illuminating. I was thinking this morning that we've now traversed the two, in a sense, climatic ends from the very dry Afghanistan to the very wet Bangladesh. And this diversity is exactly what we need to understand better in order to come up with common solutions, not assume everybody has exactly the same issues as each of us does. But thank you very much for your detailed presentation and for persevering and showing us the film anyway. I really appreciate that. I'm sorry for the glitches on our end. Thank you, everybody, for coming, and we'll see you tomorrow, same place, same time, to listen to Dr. Norbuvangdi on Bhutan. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Really grateful.
Thank you.